Hey guys, welcome to our week 7 live session. I did not get the countdown, but
I messed up the countdown, Chef. Sorry, that was my fault.
welcome guys. So just very quickly, we have passed the halfway point now. So we are in the second half of the class. And I feel like we just got here. We just started week 1, but this goes by very quickly, guys. Week after week, it feels a lot faster. We've got into a little bit more complex food week after week. The techniques are getting a lot better. The production has been amazing. No real housekeeping this week, so I'm just going to go ahead and talk to you guys about the assignments a little bit from what I've seen. It seems everybody's done a wonderful job with that tortilla española. The only thing that I've seen a little bit is that you guys are adding a little bit too much heat to those potatoes and onions initially, and then you get this kind of browning on your onions. Once you go into that second step of the cooking where you add the eggs, the potatoes, and the onions back into the super hot pan, what ends up happening is that your onions sometimes hit the bottom of the pan, and when your onions get a little bit too dark, they get bitter. So you have to be cautious of that. I'm not a fan of the flavor of raw onions, but grilled onions or sauteed onions or caramelized onions, whatever you want to call them, I'm all in on those. But if you do cook them a little bit too far or your heat's just a little bit off when you're doing that, then they do get a little bit too dark and a little bit too bitter. So that is one of those things that you want to be mindful. The potatoes are going to take a little bit longer. So what you should do is get those in first, then add your onions once your potatoes are about halfway cooked. That way we have that beautiful color on both of those. But the crust that I've been seeing on those things have been absolutely phenomenal. The flips have been really, really good as well. In terms of the paella, I did want to tell you guys, just remember, just don't confuse yourself or scare yourself with the stuff that goes on top or everything that's going on. At the end of the day, what we're doing is just rice cookery with stuff thrown on top of it, right? So make sure that those reductions are nice and on point. Just ensure that you're checking your rice. If you feel like there's a little bit too much liquid, go ahead and pop it back into the oven. Throw it stovetop over low heat with that top right back on. Be cautious though, you don't want to burn the bottom of the pan. So if that heat's on too high, you're going to scorch it. But just very, very low heat. But the presentation on those paellas has been absolutely beautiful. You guys have been killing it with the way you guys have been arranging that stuff up there. So I've been very happy with that. Just very minor things, but I think the knife cuts have gotten amazing. Just everything about your progression is exactly where it should be. You guys are killing it. And from week 1 all the way to now, I urge you, go back and look at that first assignment. Take a look at the knife cuts that you had, and then jump back to this week's assignment and take a look at that. It's night and day what I've been seeing with you guys. So I'll just give yourself a pat on the back, a clap for you guys. You guys have been really killing it. And by the time we get to week 10, 11, 12, we're going to be making restaurant quality dishes here. Chef, anything from your class that you've been seeing?
Totally support the same. A little extra coloring on some of the tortilla españolas as well. Just again, that's getting that pan a little too hot. When you get that olive oil and pan too hot, what happens is the texture of the eggs becomes a little bit spongy and crispy. You don't really want that. You want that to be soft and gentle. You don't want that. It almost gets a sheen to it. Where it's really glossy and brown and you get this spongy, like it's just not as tender as it should be. So pull down that heat a little bit. You don't want it getting too scorched. It's just going to change. Eggs are very sensitive, right? Egg cookery is one of the most delicate that there is, because to make a beautiful soft cured scrambled egg, right, that's just low and slow and you're stirring it, getting it really tender. That's a beautiful thing about eggs. They can go from this soft, creamy thing to pretty crispy, right? You think about what egg whites do, that texture that it can attain. So just pull that heat back down. But otherwise, like Chef Jerry said, looking back from week 1 to week 6, from narratives to production, you just keep getting better and better, and just keep pushing it. And always remember, like Chef Jerry said, you're never going to be perfect at the first time. And if you are, probably chances are the second or the third time, you're going to bomb it. All right. So, and that's okay. Right. It's just a part of the game and the learning practice. It's like learning to play a sport or learning to dance or learning to paint or play a musical instrument. It takes a lot of time and practice. So just keep charging forward.
All right, so let's just jump right into, sorry, does anybody have any questions very quickly? I would take like 2 before we jump into the assignment about the week 6 assignment. Anybody got anything for us on that?
I don't see anything, Chef.
All right, so let's just jump right into it then. I'm going to share my screen with you guys and let's get right into the app. Oh, there we go. Shelly, go ahead.
Shelly.
Yeah, when it comes watch the video. I've been trying to get ahead of things when you're doing the video. Now I made this dish today, and I know. Sorry,
Shelley, we have to. Hey, Shelley, we got some really crazy feedback. If you can put that question into the chat, because it's
Can you hear me now?
It's you're.
Can you hear me?
It's too much. If you can put it in the chat, we can get that in, but we can't hear you, unfortunately. It's not a good connection.
Alrighty, so while she puts that question in the chat, I will go ahead and start covering the assignment, and then we'll kind of get to that once it's there. But let me share my screen with you guys over here. This week, we are going to be making 3 different recipes. Within the tagine recipe, there are 3 different recipes, and we do have to do all of these, right? So we're going to start off with the kefta. I did want to go ahead and let you guys know, for your plating, plate your kefta together with your chermoula and then your tagine with the couscous. You don't want to have all of these things on a single plate, otherwise it's going to look it's too cluttered, right? We have a chicken product, ground beef or lamb product, as well as the couscous and the sauce. It's just too much for a single plate. So plate your kefta with the chermoula, and then your couscous with your tagine together. But for our kefta here, we are going to be using ground beef or lamb, or a combination of the two if you would like that. If you don't eat either of these, chicken is perfectly fine. Just be mindful that the chicken might stick a little bit more, because they tend to sell those meats a little bit more lean. So just be aware of that. Make sure that we oil up that the grill pan really, really nicely, so you don't get all that stuff stuck. We're going to need 4 ounces of yellow onions in a small dice. And I cannot state to you guys how important it is that these onions are pretty much as small as possible. With this assignment, I'm going to go ahead and tell you guys now, but basically one of the things that I've seen a lot is that the skewers actually end up falling apart. If we take a look at the rest of this let's take a look at the rest of this recipe and then kind of go back to the onion and ground beef situation here. I'm going to go ahead and read off these ingredients to you guys, and I need somebody to jump in after I'm done and tell me what's missing from this that you would typically see in most other types of skewers or meatballs or anything like that. So we have paprika, sweet or smoked, is perfectly fine. Some cumin, salt, cinnamon. We're going to use some mint leaves that are nice and chopped up, optional, but I would urge you to use them. They add a beautiful freshness and a wonderful flavor to this dish. Black pepper, cayenne pepper, parsley, and cilantro, all chopped up little herbs here. After reading off these ingredients to you guys, what do you notice here that's missing from, like, let's say a meatball or something like that? There's one word that we're looking for. Egg. So egg is a binder, right? So this recipe does not have a binder in it. So we do have to be very, very cautious of that. If your meat and your onions are together, the only thing keeping this skewer together is that ground beef. The ground beef is going to stick to the ground beef, right? But if you have a piece of onion that's in between, then now it's no longer, I'm like pressing buttons on my AC over here. It's no longer sticking together, right? So what you want to do is make sure that those onion pieces are small enough so that even if if the onion is in between your meat pieces, the meat still kind of touches around it. If those pieces are too big, they take up too much of the surface area on the skewer, and your skewers are going to fall apart. Just imagine 5-6 pieces of onions around the skewer part. It's going to force it to break. So make sure that those knife cuts are nice and small. Again, make sure that they're nice and uniform too, that we want these things to cook nice and evenly. You don't want to have triangles and rectangles and squares just for mincing it all together. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and combine all of the ingredients into a bowl, mix them together, let that sit either for a couple of hours, 1 hour, or overnight, preferably. It's going to allow all these beautiful flavors to come together. We're going to preheat a grill or a grill pan to high heat. Whatever you use for the chicken in week 1, you can use for this as well. We're looking for those beautiful grill marks on this, right? So we're going to go ahead and take that meat, divide it into 8. You can just go ahead, weigh the whole thing, and then just divide that by 8 and make sure that those skewers are nice and uniform. The reason why we want to make sure that the portion sizes are even is when you get out to the industry or you have your own restaurant, your own food truck, whatever it is, you do not want to be serving things that are just different sizes and stuff. Sometimes you'll get 2 steaks that are maybe shaped a little bit differently, but they're always going to weigh exactly the same. And same thing here. If 2 tables next to each other order the same thing, one person gets skewers that are 6 ounces, another person next to that table gets skewers that are 4 ounces, they're gonna be like, hey, that looks a lot bigger than what I got over here. So we need to make sure we stay nice and consistent with that. And then another thing is just for your costing, you want to make sure that your cooks and everybody that's portioning everything out for you is making sure that they weigh everything out, so that if your recipe says you're serving 4 ounces, that's what you're costing for. You can't be serving 6 ounces. You're losing money. And then if you're serving less than that, then you're cheating your customers, and they're not going to come back if you're not giving them the food that they want or the amount that they're paying for. So make sure that those are all nice and uniform in terms of shape, in terms of weight, in terms of size. Very, very important, food portioning. We're going to go ahead and shape one portion around a skewer into kind of like a sausage like shape. Set that aside, continue with the remaining portions. You're going to do that for all 8 of them. Lightly oil your grill pan. And then you're going to place your skewers to grill with about 1 inch in between each of them, so that you avoid steaming. If they're too close together, they're not going to get that golden brown sear that we're looking for. Once you do go ahead and cook them to the desired doneness, you get a good char on the outside. If you're working in batches, just cover the pieces that you have already taken out with a little bit of foil or something like that, just to keep them nice and warm. You don't want these guys to get cold. And then we're going to go ahead and serve these with the chermoula. One thing I did want to tell you guys is do not be afraid of the color on these guys. They're going to get very dark. Well, as soon as you put them onto that grill, they're going to start getting very, very dark. If you look at the spice mix here, think of it, we're going into Africa, right? So think of this as kind of like an ancestor to the blackened seasoning that we have in the US now. As soon as anything that has blackened seasoning on it touches any type of heat, that stuff turns super dark real quick. But it's not burnt. It's just the way the spices kind of mix together. So questions? Go ahead, Eric.
Yeah. So my question, you said blackened seasoning. Is that basically what all these seasonings are called mixed together?
Kind of. Think of it like an ancestor to it. Blackened seasoning has a couple of different things in it than this, but this is kind of where the idea comes from Africa.
Okay, and when you use seasonings like that, because I notice too sometimes when I use like seasoning, it sears up like pretty fast. Is
Yeah,
that
some
because of
of
the
these
seasoning?
spices are going to blacken up very quickly. Some of them are not. So it just kind of depends on your combination. For example, if you're using like the spice mix that goes into like a barbecue, for example, like where you're using like a garlic powder, onion powder, those kind of things, they're not going to darken up as quick. But once you start adding like ground peppers and different herbs and stuff, those things do brown up a little bit quicker. So it just really depends on the spice mix that you're using for that. This one has cumin, it's got paprika, so those things, they do get dark pretty quick. Cinnamon as well, cayenne.
Okay, and another thing too, I didn't quite hear you. So are we making, what are they, little balls or something?
You will be making skewers here. Let me go ahead and show you. I was going to hold these off till the end, but this is kind of what you're looking for here. This is the chermoula sauce with the kefta skewer right here. This person used a metal skewer. This one over here made them a little bit thicker, but they put 2 per skewer here. This is kind of what you're looking for in terms of presentation for these guys. And there's the chermoula sauce in the middle. So whichever method works best for you. If you want them a little bit chubbier, you can go ahead and do that. If you want them a little bit thinner and a little bit longer, that works as well, as long as you cook them to the appropriate doneness.
Okay, so my question is, after they get done marinating it, do we kind of cook it without the skewer and then put it on the
No. You're cooking it
skewer
on the
and
skewer. You're using the skewer on the grill. So yeah, so
Okay.
you shape your portion on the skewer and then you place your skewer onto the grill.
Is this a charcoal grill or do it matter?
Shelly, I'm a little bit scared to tell you to unmute yourself because last time it went off really, really bad. If you could just please type your question in on the chat. Jeremy, go ahead.
So for the skewers, I either have the metal skewers or the wooden bamboo ones.
If you have the metal ones, go for it. That'll avoid you having to be super cautious with soaking your skewers ahead of time and those burning. The metal skewers are going to kind of circulate the heat a little bit better too towards the center of your of the meat.
Okay, and then I'm using like ground beef for mine. I'm using ground beef.
Perfect.
And I'm gonna and then the grill that I have, I'm gonna use the same grill that I have outside. That's on. So I just put it right on the grill. Just would I just put it right back, just right on the grate?
Exactly.
Do that then.
Yes, sir.
All right, and we want that on high heat, right? On both knobs.
Yeah, this meat is going to cook a lot quicker than your chicken is going to cook. And because it is ground beef, you should probably still cook it to 165. Just kind of that's what the FDA is saying now. But ground beef can definitely be cooked a little bit less than that. So cook it till it's still nice and juicy, but kind of cooked all the way through. Don't want to butcher it and overcook it either.
Okay.
Alrighty, I'm gonna go ahead and lower your guys' hands. Deborah, go ahead. That'll be the last.
Chef, I'm just gonna hop in here really quickly. There's some chatter in the chat box regarding to charring versus grilling, right? So depending upon if you're using a grill, if you're using a cast iron pan, if you're using a flat iron, right, you're going to get different marks. There's different levels, right? You do want to get some color development on there because often, most traditionally, these would be grilled over an open flame, right? So you're going to get those little licks of flame. You're going to get some color development. You want little bits of crispiness on there. That's part of it. Now, are we saying blacken the whole thing, get the whole thing charred so it's inedible? No way. But a little bit of dark color and texture, just like when we think about grilled meats, right, or barbecued meats, you get a little bit of that color, right? Now, it doesn't mean that we want the whole thing blackened again, but a little bit of char and depth of flavor is okay. We don't want to dry that out though. Additionally, right, you don't want to overcook it so that you're working on this char, and the next thing you know, you've got a really dry kefta kebab. As far as fat content, it really depends. A standard way is 80-20. That's pretty much what's most common. And you're going to have a decent amount of fat there. 90-10, it starts getting a little too lean. I personally think the fat holds some moisture in there. It doesn't dry it out. You're going to have a little bit more wiggle room with cooking. That would be my personal opinion. Chef?
Yeah, the fat is also going to act as a nice binder to this. If it's just too lean, it's going to fall off that skewer.
Exactly.
Anytime I buy ground beef, I'm like, what's the fattiest percentage you got?
Yeah. Got to get some flavor in there. But that's about it. We'll hop into the tagine if the tagine question isn't answered afterwards, but we are covered with the shish, the kefta.
Deborah, last question. And then
I just wanted to know, did it matter whether it was a charcoal or electric grill? But since you mentioned about the charring a little bit, I'll go with the charcoal.
Yeah, charcoal will give you the best flavor for sure. When in doubt, charcoal.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Welcome.
all right, Sharice, we'll hold off on that question for a bit. Let us move on to the chermoula. Oops, I'm clicking on the wrong stuff here. Let me go ahead and share my screen with you guys once again and jump into the next recipe. So chermoula, this one's super simple. So we have a lot of beautiful herbs here. We have cilantro, we have parsley, we have mint, some zested lemon, some garlic cloves that have been turned into a paste. We have done this before, so make sure that you guys are reading these recipes and understand the knife cuts and the stuff that goes into kind of the preparation of these ingredients. So we're going to go ahead and take our garlic cloves and just kind of use the back of the knife to just turn it into a paste, right? You gotta chop those guys up nice and fine, and then just use the back of the knife, add some pressure. You can add a little bit of salt. Be mindful though, if you add salt, you can actually start scratching your knife. So just kind of play with that a little bit if you want to do it that way. It's a lot easier to get it into a paste, but the salt can scratch your knife. So if you care a lot about your knife, I wouldn't do it. If it's just an everyday, regular old knife, be my guest, it's going to make it a lot easier. Some ground cumin, some coriander, paprika, sweet or smoked again, and then some crushed red peppers are optional here. Saffron shreds, optional as well. If you have them from last week, use them. Why not? It's going to add a beautiful flavor to this. And then a 1/4 cup of olive oil. And then as always, salt and pepper as needed. So with this, we're going to combine all of these ingredients into a bowl. Taste, season, and adjust as necessary. There's also another way that we can go about it. Combine all of your ingredients except the oil into a food processor or a blender. And then this is a key word here, pulse. You want to be very mindful not to turn this into a salad dressing, essentially, right? We want this to have a little bit of texture to it. So you want those beautiful little leaves to be visible. And we can see that right over here. Look, take a look at this guy here. This person just chopped it up, added the oil, and you have that texture to this. It's not just a kind of dipping sauce, right? So we're going to go ahead and pulse it into those guys, get a little bit chopped up. I would definitely go ahead and chop your herbs up ahead of time, at least a little bit, before you do go ahead and throw them into a food processor or a blender. The reason for that is your knife should be a lot sharper than the blades on that food processor. And if you just throw it in there, your herbs are going to get very, very dark because the blades in there are probably going to be a little bit more dull. And as you guys know, if your knife is dull, when you chop herbs, you release all of that chlorophyll onto your cutting board, and you'll see that your cutting board has these like very green stains on it. That just means your knife isn't sharp enough. You're just bruising them. You're just kind of cutting them with pressure as opposed to with the sharpness of the knife. So do be mindful of that. With the motor running, you're going to go ahead and add your oil and just kind of stream it in nice and slowly. Taste, season, and adjust as necessary. If you are using a blender or a food processor, I would try to do this as quickly as possible. As the blender and food processor do kind of keep going, they release heat. So that's one of those things that you do not want to incorporate heat into this. Otherwise, your herbs and stuff are going to start wilting and get very, very dark. So we want it to have that beautiful bright green color to it, right? And then again, taste, season, and adjust as necessary. And then this can be kept in an airtight container in the refrigerator for up to 3 days. So it lasts a little bit if you do have some left over. But pretty straightforward here. Just kind of chop up all of your things together, mix them together. If you're using a blender, remember, just be very mindful that the blenders and food processors do heat up, and you don't want to incorporate too much heat into this guy. Any questions on this guy very quickly? I'll take about 2 if you guys have them. Deborah?
Yes. You already got me.
Oh, sorry, your hand's still up.
Oh, you said you was putting hands down. I'm sorry.
Oh, alrighty, so no questions on this guy, nice and straightforward. And this is kind of the picture I showed you is kind of what we should be looking for with the skewer and the sauce together. Let me share very quickly once again. This person has a little bit of that couscous on the bottom, but really we want just the kefta and the chermoula together, and then your tagine and your couscous together. We can see it over here as well. They got some beautiful grilled lemons here as well. Just make sure that stage the plate nicely, make it look nice for your presentation. Remember, guys, what we want is for you to be able to get restaurant quality plates into these pictures. Your final product should be you on the line, kind of sending this plate out to customers. Or imagine yourself at a restaurant and you get the plate that you're giving to us. Would you be happy if you paid about, say, $16 to $18 for that plate? Kind of the price range of like a moderately nice restaurant. Just kind of keep that in the back of your mind anytime you're plating these assignments up. So let's get to the tagine and the couscous. This week, we're gonna need 4 chicken legs. We're gonna need salt and pepper as needed, some olive oil, large yellow onions that have been sliced, and you're gonna want these in a julienne. That's gonna give you that most uniform cooking for them, and it's gonna make it so that they're just, presentation-wise, they're gonna look a lot nicer. So kind of shoot for a julienne on these here. Some ground coriander, pepper, either white or black pepper works perfectly fine. Some ground ginger, ground turmeric, 1.5 cups of chicken stock, and then preserved lemons. So we'll cover this right now because this recipe is a little bit strange in the way that it talks about these lemons. We do not want to add all of the lemons that we make here. It's very, very important. So I'm going to go ahead and state it now, but we'll talk about it very shortly because it's if you add all of the preserved lemons that you're making 2 preserved lemons here, which you're cutting into quarters. The recipe is only asking for 1/4 of one of the lemons, so 1/8 of the recipe that you're making. Otherwise, this stuff is very salty, very acidic, and it will just destroy the whole dish. So be very mindful of that. We're going to need 6 ounces of green olives. Ideally, if you can find pitted olives, just so that you don't bite into them. But anything that you can find is perfectly fine. If you find them with the pit inside, that's perfectly fine. Just make sure that you let the people that are eating it know that there's a pit inside because you do not want to bite into that. And then 1 tablespoon of fresh parsley finely chopped, and then 1 teaspoon of cilantro finely chopped. So you should have those from your chermoula already. When we talk about the preserved lemons, that is going to be the first thing that you're going to make. And we have the recipe for that up here. So you're going to combine your water, your salt into a small saucepan. You're going to bring that up to a boil. You're going to add your lemons that you've already cut into quarters. Make sure that you remove the sticker from those guys. While that sticker is edible, technically, you don't want to be serving that or eating that. It's just kind of a little bit sloppy there. So make sure that we remove those guys. We're going to go ahead and add the lemons, reduce the heat, and cook for about 30 minutes or until your liquid is about reduced to about half a cup and your lemon rind is nice and tender. Very important. You're going to see that the the pulp of your lemon has pretty much turned into mush by this point, but what you really want is for the lemon zest or the lemon rind to be just nice and tender. We're going to remove from the heat, let that cool down, come down to room temperature before slicing. So for our recipe here, remember, this is going to make 8 quarters, but for your tagine, you only need 1 quarter. So you need 1/8 of that recipe. Very, very important, guys. I cannot say this enough. If you add that, I am 100% sure I'm going to see on your flavor journals, this was too acidic. It's because we didn't follow the instructions. So make sure that we're paying attention to that stuff. For our tagine, what we're going to do is we're going to heat our oven to 350. That's the first thing you're going to do. Season your chicken with salt and pepper. Heat your oil in a 8-quart Dutch oven over medium-high heat. Add your chicken to the pot and cook, turning until brown, about 12 to 15 minutes. Again, make sure we get that heat up. We want to render out as much of that fat as possible. Get that beautiful crispy exterior to it. And it's just one of those texture things. When you bite into flimsy chicken skin, it's just not appetizing. So render out as much of it as you can, get that nice beautiful Maillard reaction going, get that beautiful golden brown color. Once you do go ahead and do that, we're going to add our spices to the pot, and then we're going to go ahead and cook that for 2 minutes. We're going to go ahead and add our olives and we're going to take out the chicken here, actually. Do not leave your chicken in there. Take your chicken out, let it sit out for a bit, and then add your spices into that same pot. And then it's going to make it a little bit easier to kind of move around. Add your spices, cook those for about 2 minutes so you get those beautiful aromatics in the air. Add your olives, add your preserved lemons, and then go ahead and return the chicken to the pot. Once you have all of that stuff in there, bring your mixture to a boil, and then add the lid to that. And then we're going to go ahead and just pop that into the oven. Covered up for about 35 to 40 minutes. Again, just kind of cook it until your chicken is nice and tender, until your chicken is cooked all the way through. If you need to check it with the thermometer, go ahead and do so. You're shooting for 165, right? Yeah, that's pretty much it. Once it's all done, you're going to go ahead and plate it up with the couscous, which we're going to talk about very shortly. And then we're going to garnish it with some of that parsley and cilantro just over the top, some beautiful fresh herbs. In terms of couscous, what we're going to need is 2 cups of couscous. Fine grain is what you want to shoot for. And I'll talk about fine grain versus pearl or Israeli right now. We're going to use unsalted butter, olive oil, water, and kosher salt. Very straightforward recipe here. We're going to bring your butter, your oil, your salt, and 3 cups of water to a boil over high heat. We're going to go ahead and stir in that couscous. We're going to season with salt and pepper. Taste that water. Make sure that it's a little bit salty. We don't want it to be crazy salty. Remember, this is going to reduce and it's going to absorb into the couscous. So if it's too salty, it's as it reduces, it's going to get worse. So just do be mindful of that. We're going to go ahead and remove it from the heat after stirring couscous, season with salt and pepper, remove from the heat. Yeah, so cut the heat and then just kind of let that sit until the water is absorbed for about 10 minutes or so. Again, just check one. Go ahead and grab one of those little things. Make sure that it's rehydrated all the way through into the center. Go ahead and fluff up your couscous with the fork and then set aside in a nice warm place until your tagine is ready. Little differences here. So there is a fine grain couscous, which is this guy here. This is what you're shooting for in terms of your couscous. And this is how you want it to look. Take a look at, doesn't zoom in much, but take a look at every single one of these little areas here. Look at all of the air that has been incorporated into this. It's nice and fluffy. It's not just super dense down onto the plate, right? So you want your couscous to be able to just kind of stack on itself very loosely. That's what you're looking for in terms of perfect couscous. And then if you cannot find this one for any reason, pearl couscous or Israeli couscous is perfectly fine. And it's going to look like this guy here. Just make sure that you find a recipe or follow what's on the box for it, as the cooking might be just a little bit different than the other one here. Yeah, either one of these is going to work. Obviously, shoot for the fine grain or this one over here. If you can't find it, shoot for the pearl couscous. But in terms of what it should look like, we do have these plates over here. So this person did use pearl couscous here. We have the preserved lemon, we have the chicken, the olives, all of that beautiful stuff here. We take a look at this one over here. This person made like a type of bread with it, right? So they stacked it up very nicely here. You can see that couscous is nice and fluffy. Got a little bit of garnishes here. You can kind of see it over here a little bit better too. This person decided to do 3 little mountains of couscous. But again, the sauce is a little bit watery here. It shouldn't be super dry. It shouldn't be super wet either. It shouldn't be like a soup, but it should have a nice, beautiful, just rich sauce to it. And take a look at the color. It's very, very yellow, right? So just something to keep in mind there. You can take a look at this one over here. This person put both of them together, but in a very small quantity. So this is something you can do as well. Any questions on this assignment here, Deborah?
I did, but I kind of was lost on the lemon thing, but I'll just go back and visit the archive.
No, it's okay. Let me go back to that. No worries. That's what we're here for.
It was something you said, if you don't reduce it or something. I think it was about the lemon.
Okay, so with your preserved lemons, mind you, this recipe is for 2 whole lemons, but for our tagine, just very quickly, once again, we are only going to use 1 piece of that, so 1/4 of the 8 that we're making. But basically, we're just going to combine the water, the salt into a small sauce pot, bring that up to a boil. Once we do go ahead and see that it's boiling, just add those lemons in there, reduce the heat, cook it for about 30 minutes or so. Until you have about 1/2 cup of water, or until your lemon rind is nice and tender. That's pretty much it. This is a very quick method of doing it. Normally, preserved lemons would be just kind of stockpiled with salt and just kind of left alone for like months at a time. And that's how they would have them during the later times, during the other seasons. But this one, we're just going to do a very quick method here.
So the portion that we're putting in there, they're going to be already sliced. Is that what you're saying?
When you get your preserved lemons together, you're going to quarter them. So your lemon should be cut into 4 pieces, and then you're just going to grab one of those pieces and use it for your tagine over here.
Okay, gotcha.
And then in your tagine, you're going to go ahead and slice your lemons into just little super thin juliennes or something. You don't want to plate up the whole preserved lemon. It's one of those things that we've talked about before where I'm not a fan of using just parsley sprigs as a garnish. Because when that hits the table, what's the first thing a customer is going to do? They're going to grab that garnish, grab a napkin, and now you have clutter on the table. They're not going to eat it. So make your garnishes useful. Make them so that they add something to the dish in terms of taste as well as just color and presentation. So slice up that little lemon piece nice and into thin little juliennes. Just kind of sprinkle that over the top so that a person can actually grab a little bit of that lemon zest with the couscous and a little piece of chicken, add that little acidity bomb into their mouth. As opposed to them just kind of moving that whole piece of lemon off to the side.
Okay, thank you.
You got it. Jeremy, go ahead.
For the couscous, I have this fine kind, and then I have this and then I have the pearl kind. Which one should I use? I have this.
You use the fine.
One, I would use the fine one.
Yeah, correct. That one's going to be a lot better. It's going to give you that beautiful fluffy couscous that we're looking for. The other one is just kind of a second resort there if we can't find the fine grain.
So I can cook with both of them and just experiment with both of those, the pearl and the finer one. Huh?
Absolutely.
All right, and then all right.
All righty, Eric. Oh, Chastity.
Hi, Chef. Where do you purchase the couscous at? Like Walmart? Or, because I've never seen that before. Is it like where the rice is?
It would be with the grains, yeah. I believe I've seen it there before. If not, then you might have to check to see if they have like kind of a Mediterranean section or something like that. You'll be able to find the pearl couscous there because I doubt they're going to have an African food section at any Walmart. But yeah, you might be able to find pearl couscous in like a small little Mediterranean section at Walmart or something like that. I know sometimes they have that. Shelly says the rice section at Walmart. So where the grains are, it should be.
Okay, thank you, Chef.
Because I didn't. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Also note, sometimes you will find couscous in a premix with other spices and herbs and dehydrated vegetables. That's not what we're looking for. That's just gonna have a lot of other flavors incorporated into that batch. So just go for that real pure couscous. Otherwise, if worst comes to worst, you could use that one. It'll usually be by that brand called Far East. But we want to steer away from any pre-mixed flavored couscous boxes.
I Googled it and because I didn't know what it was to begin with. And it came in the same container as our what is it, RBO rice? Whatever
Yeah,
the rice
arborio rice, you got it.
that. It was the same container, it looked identical, so it's probably where you got that from.
It's beside it.
Yeah.
Next to it, yep. Yeah, and then as we say every single week, guys, look ahead. These are things that we can purchase ahead of time in a large Amazon order or something like that. These are all dry goods that will hold for a very, very long time. So just make sure that you're looking ahead at these recipes and just seeing like, oh, this might be something that I'm not going to be able to find at my local store. So just keep that in mind. Alrighty, I think we're all set with the assignment. It doesn't look like we have any more questions. If you guys do, go ahead and send them mine and Chef Catherine's way, and we'll be happy to answer them. But Chef, you're
Yeah,
up.
let's hit it. All righty, awesome. So obviously, we are, with this week, we are kind of just tipping into North African cuisine, right? And that is only because there's so many different cuisines in Africa that we cannot cover them. Just like when we did the US, right? We started off, we did barbecue chicken, cornbread, and kind of focused in one area. So that's what we're doing here in Africa, because obviously Africa is not a country, it is a continent. So let's pull up that map and get this going. So you know how we like it. Let's lay down get the lay of the land first so everybody knows where we're at and what's going on. And let me just pull this up. I've got, of course, as always, like a million windows pulled up because there's so much to show you guys. Where the heck is this now? Of course, now I've lost it. One sec. I'm usually working with like 3 different windows, and then boom, here we go. All right, we're in, ladies and gents. Let me just get this. Now, of course, I found the one page and I lost you all. I need to go back to having 2 screens to manage this. All righty. Disregard this. We'll be coming up to this later. But hopping right in, right? So we have just left, let's pull this back, right? We've just left Spain, right? And as you can see, Spain looks pretty small compared to Africa, right? Huge difference there. We've hopped right across the Gibraltar Strait and going into Morocco, where this tagine and couscous in North Africa is found in this whole region, right? Got a lot of couscous, we've got tagine. But as we start to move throughout the continent of Africa, the cuisine is going to vary drastically, right? What do we know first and foremost about how land dictates food? We know that if over here on the West Coast, we're gonna have a lot of fish, right? We've got coastal areas. We're gonna have fish coming in here. We're gonna have fish over here. What are we gonna have in this area, which is full of desert, right? Now we get down into deeper jungle, right? We've got the Sahara, then we go down again farther, more tip, right? Huge amounts of diversity in foods, animals, grains, crops, and fruits that are going to be growing in this region. Not to mention the influence of, what else do we know? The influence of immigration, people that have moved from other places to Africa influences food. Surprisingly, Ethiopian cuisine, right here. Huge influence on from Indian cuisine, because what happened? Old England, right? UK, Britain, Great Britain. Well, they were around the world conquering everything, just like the Mediterranean folks, right? Italians and Spaniards. And Portuguese, these groups of people had boats. They were out and they just started conquering the world. They started enslaving people. They started taking crops, using what they could, bringing them back, started to import, export, right? They were businessmen, they were tradesmen. And with that, unfortunately, came horrific times in history that we are still facing, right? And it's not fun to talk about. It's not pleasant to talk about, but if we don't talk about it, that's also denying it, right? And the reality is the huge influence of what I want to tell you, which is a thing called African diaspora, all right, which is a term that not many people know about, but African diaspora has impacted American cuisine, actually cuisine all around the Americas and the Caribbean, all right? Because of the slave trade. We have huge influence of African cuisine in the Caribbean, in Central America, in South America, and in North America. It's actually incredible. When you are taken from your homeland, what do we know? When you move or you're taken, right? What do you bring? You bring with you memories, flavors, techniques, distillation, all right? Ways that you purified things, ways that you cooked, ingredients, and you mimic those, right? Just like we learned that the Italian Americans who came over, they were like, well, we don't have the ingredients, but we're gonna make it our way, right? Same like how gumbo became part of American cuisine, Southern American cuisine. That is an originally African dish. All right. So when we start looking at dishes, you're going to start to see that there's a huge influence of these incredible flavor profiles that were taken not only from Africa and around the world, but also we brought the Middle East. Let's go back to that map really quickly to India, to Africa. So what you'll notice here, all right, we're going to be going to Middle East next week or the week after. So if we zoom back, right, we know we've got all of Europe here, all right, Mediterranean, Northern Africa. Northern Africa has a very high concentration of Muslims, right? Arabs. Well, guess what? Where is this really close to? Egypt, the Middle East, right? Then we hop over. India's not that far away, right? So when the change of spices traveling all through the way and along with religion, that had a huge impact in this northern region of Africa. You're not going to find a lot of pork, almost none. You're going to find a lot of Arabs and Muslims in this region, and then you're going to start to find all different types of. You're going to see influence of Christianity. You're going to see more religions based on nature as well. The seasons dictating everything. The farther you go down, South Africa also has a completely different influence. All right, huge Dutch population there. The Dutch were down there. Okay, so now you're starting to see that Africa is far more. It actually doesn't get enough justice in the food world that I think that it deserves, because when we start looking at it, it is unbelievable. I'm going to just pull up a few things. All right. So first of all, there's a spice called Ras Al Hanout, okay, which means spice house, the shop of basically it's like the house blend. House blend comes from Morocco, but you're also going to see Ras Al Hanout in the northern region. This is going to compose of a lot of the ingredients from. Let's get a visual here, as long as they're not, as you can see, here's a good one, right? We've got this beautiful blend. As you can see, what is that reminiscent of, right? 30 or more ingredients. Where else have we seen that 30 or more ingredients? First of all, we saw that in with the mole, right? Where we're taking all these beautiful spices, nuts, herbs, and we're gonna see that in Indian curries. Now, where else do we see a curry popping up? You know, we know that curries are famous in India. We know that Thailand has curries, right? The green curry. Where else is there a curry? Where else is, yep, right, Thailand. Where else is there a curry? Where do we see roti and curried goat? Does anybody know?
Jamaica.
Jamaica, Trinidad, Tobago. Yes, all right. So are we starting to think, what the heck's going on? How did we get curry over down in Jamaica, right? And we've got a curry, essentially a curry blend or spice blend in North Africa. Things start moving. People, religion, ingredients, products, places. This is how everything actually expands and blows up, all right? In the sense of we've got curry and different meats and games that will be utilized in certain areas compared to others. All right, it's pretty fantastic. Let me get back on here. All right, so we're talking about Ras Al Hanout. Does anybody ever gone to an Ethiopian restaurant? Does anybody know about Ethiopian cuisine?
I've been there for a wedding.
Okay. What did you do you remember anything about the food? I mean, it was a wedding, so you know, things are probably going on. Lots of love and happiness and celebrating.
It's different. It's more like more vegetables, vegetarian.
Excellent, excellent. Yes, tons of vegetables. They have a beautiful flatbread called injera that is made by fermenting grains. I'm going to show you what it looks like, and you guys are going to tell me what you think this looks like. Delicious and spicy. Yes. Now, what's interesting also about Ethiopian cuisine. So now, if I were to look at this and I didn't know what cuisine this was, I would say, yeah, that looks like Indian food. That looks like a dosa. This looks like a crepe. We've got like a dal and vegetables, tons of vegetables, lentils, right? Slow cooked stews, tons of flavor. You eat with your hands. You take this fermented injera and you use that to then scoop up, it's usually communal, and eat these beautiful flavors. Now, one interesting thing about Ethiopia, also the religion, right? So reason why you're gonna see a lot of vegetarian cuisine in Ethiopia is due to tons of essentially fasting, right? We know that fasting periods are found through Christianity, through Islam, through Judaism. Everybody pretty much has a fasting time. And that's going to either regulate what you can or cannot eat, the times that you can eat, and it'll also say what you can eat during certain periods, right? So we don't eat meat during this time. All right, that means we're going to have a huge vegetarian base. All right, now let's keep going deeper. Does anybody know? I'm going to pull up this dish and I'm going to see what you all think it looks like. What might it remind you of? What does this look like?
Paella.
Okay, paella. Great, great, great comparison there. Definitely. What else? Midwestern food from America. Okay, what else?
Is that Indian food?
All right, Indian food. What else does it look like?
Mediterranean.
Mediterranean. What about rice and fish? Where else do we see that?
India.
Africa.
The boudin. All right, this is a French African dish. All right, but this has a lot of its connections to gumbo, right? Rice and shellfish cooked together. Rice and fish. Okay, now we know that there are a lot of grains that are going to be consumed. What do you think one of the biggest consumed grains and grown is in Africa? What do we think?
Different. Beans.
Beans. Yep, there are a lot of legumes in Africa. What grain though? If I show you this, what do we think this, what, if you don't know what this is, that's okay. That's why it's all about introducing new products to you. All right. I want to show you what this grain looks like because this is indigenous to Africa. Who's ever heard of millet?
Yes. I use it all the time.
Okay, so millet is a beautiful grain. It's actually gluten-free. It's high in protein. It comes in about 4 different shades. I guess this one's saying maybe 5. I've seen it in yellow, pale, and golden brown. You'll see that it has some similarities with couscous because it's these small grains, but it's completely different. It takes a lot longer to actually cook. As you can see, this is how it grows. All right. And it is incredible.
Very healthy.
Check it out. All right. What about, does anybody know? Yeah, teff is another great one. What other grains do you think are indigenous to Africa? What other plants? Any thoughts?
Wheat.
Wheat is coming from a little bit farther, closer into in the Middle East area. We got okra. Yes. All right. What else? What's one of the most, think about it when you look, we talked about this before. What oil do you often see in your pastries? When you look at your ingredient list in your pastries, what do you see? What did you hear about getting totally a bad write-up for a while? What type of oil was that?
Palm oil.
Palm oil, who said that?
Felicia.
Felicia, yes, exactly. Palm oil. Start looking at your regular old cookies, crackers, your pastries. Check out the ingredient. You'll see palm oil is one of the biggest ingredients. Now, what happened there? What's happening then and has been happening is huge deforestation and utilization of the palm tree to get palm oil. All right. Then it went on this whole thing. It was palm oil is bad for you because it's saturated fats. But guess what? Palm oil is a great, great fat to cook with. It adds a completely different flavor profile. And there's red palm oil and essentially white or yellow palm oil as well. This is critical for making and getting a certain flavor profile for specific stews. Without palm oil, you're not going to achieve the color. You're not going to achieve the mouthfeel. You're not going to achieve the flavor profile. All right. So a few other indigenous plants that I want to talk to you about. Sorghum. Who's heard of sorghum? Where do we see sorghum? Anybody in the South or Southwest should know about sorghum in the US. Sorghum. It's another grain, okay? Indigenous to Africa. You're going to see that utilized in the South and Southwest. You'll see that more predominantly down there. It's going to be harder to find on grocery store shelves in the North or the Midwest. All right. You also have a ton of fruits, figs, melons, lots of melons, tropical fruits, right? Africa, remember, is in the tropical zone as well. So do we think tropical fruits go there? Of course, dates. Dates are also growing there. Okra. Let's see, what else? We've got dates, okra. Oh, what's this thing that's one of the most popular drinks in the world? Beer. Yes, beer is a huge part of the culture in Africa. But Tara, yes, coffee, Ethiopian coffee. All right, that is where it started. If you enter a house in Ethiopia, first of all, you're getting it green, right? And they're going to roast those coffee beans right in front of your face. All right, when you enter, there's going to be a small fire going, cast iron or a stone heating plate, and they're going to start toasting and roasting those coffee beans. We often think that coffee beans come in, that I know I certainly didn't know before that coffee beans started green way back in the day. What we're getting when we see is a finished roasted product where they've released their oils and the flavor has come out. Coffee beans start off as green. You toast them to achieve the right flavor and start extracting the caffeine. Then you grind it and you pour boiling hot water over it, right? With this process, this is just like we learned in some areas where you might be greeted with tea, right? That tea is very popular in Morocco, for example, mint tea specifically. In Ethiopia, it's going to be all about coffee, right? And as you sit and stay, you're going to have more and more coffee coming at you, right? But you're not going to get all jittery, right? Because it's going to constantly getting weaker and weaker. As you stay longer, the coffee gets weaker. The caffeine content starts dropping because you're using those same beans as one. All right. There's so much more to go on. I'm going to still keep going for a few more minutes, and then we'll hop this into the study hall. I want to talk to you a little bit about South African cuisine. And what about bushmeat? Has anybody heard the term bushmeat? Does anybody know what the term bushmeat is?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, what is it? Tell us, Felicia. Or is that Angela? Felicia?
Bushmeat is very delicious. It tastes more like chicken.
It could taste like chicken. Yeah, bushmeat can really be almost anything. right? Bushmeat, you are out hunting, right? In the bushes, right? In the jungle, wherever, in the desert. What do you come across? That is going to be bushmeat. And then you're going to grill it, right? Over a fire and eat it. It's going to be delicious. It could be pretty much anything. Now, there's some pros and cons to that because you can get into issues where you're harvesting or hunting endangered animals, right? And we obviously don't want that. We want to keep them preserved. But yeah, as Chef Jerry said, a catch-all phrase for the meat of wild animals, right? Not just in Africa, but everywhere. We've got bushmeat. Chef Jerry was talking about it last week, right? With squirrels. What about in Peru? We talked about guinea pigs. Okay, bushmeat is just a term for any meat that is wild and hunted. Now, what do we know about wild food? Just like deer or venison here in the States, or duck or rabbit or squirrels or guinea pig or ox. It's going to have a completely different flavor profile than domesticated animals. All right. Domesticated animals have a specific feed that they are given, right? Wild animals are out there eating nuts, fruits, berries, feeding on natural things. So their flavor profile, and they're exercising, right? So they're working for their meal. They're not staying in a cage getting fed in their trough. All right. They're going to have a completely unique flavor profile, just like we learned about different the Iberian ham last week with eating nuts, right? That's that flavor profile. So if you've got a bunch of wild animals out there eating wild nuts and berries and wild grains, they're going to have a different flavor profile. Like Felicia was saying, it has a really beautiful flavor profile. Again, like we said, you do have to be, a little bit cautious of what is getting harvested, as we know that there's just endangered animals. But yes, snakes, also huge component that we didn't get too deep enough into when we learned about Mexican cuisine. We dabbled in it, but insects are also huge in Africa. Grubs. All right. Guess what? Pure protein. Okay. This is called pure protein. You fry them up, you heat them up. They can be delicious. They can be squishy. They can be crunchy. They can be salty. You can flavor them. Incredible amounts of cuisines going on. All right. Let's cut this one out, and then we're going to hop in to study hall. So I'm just going to kill this, and then let's rock and roll.